Well, 24 hours of news headlines, nationally and internationally, summed up in 1 hour. We have all the stories for you, but first, let's take a look at the highlights.
Tonight, opposition to the training of teachers on the new curricula in some centers.
We are not dumps. Teachers are not dumps. Teachers are human beings, went to school properly, and they understand everything. So we are saying no.
Government insists it's successful and will continue.
You can either decide to see it or close your eyes.
And a late irregular 40 billion shilling tender sees KPA MD questioned in Mombasa as Suzuri weekend in lockup ends after bail is set. Plus, the church commits to step up in the fight against corruption.
Let us not hide this thing of Harambe and the guest of honor. The guest of honor will come, begin to give a speech, and in the speech, then he takes us out of the church message.
Also tonight, an Easter weekend that turned tragic for a young car devotee.
That driver of that vehicle which hit my son's car came from Dodoma.
One family still coming to terms with the loss of their son.
NTV Tonight with Ken Mijungu.
A very, very good evening and welcome to our broadcast. Our sign language interpreter tonight is David Agondoa. We begin from the Council of Governors, which has asked the Senate to investigate the controversial 38 billion shilling medical equipment leasing project, for which each of the 47 counties repays 200 million shillings annually. The governors termed the project a fraud and a scandal in the making, say they were twisted and blackmailed by the national government in accepting the deal. Zainab Ismail begins our coverage tonight.
It was a very good source of kickbacks between the people in government and the suppliers of the equipment. Up to this very day, we don't even know who those suppliers were.
Governors say the multi-billion medical equipment lease deal by the national government is shrouded in a web of secretive agreements between the government and suppliers of the equipment. They want a comprehensive probe to look at each of the 5 contracts and a case-by-case analysis of the value of money made.
We don't know who the suppliers are. We have not looked at their agreement between themselves, suppliers, and the Ministry of Health. We have never. But why I signed is last minute is that my equipment was delivered to Kakamega General Hospital at night on a Saturday. And I want to be quoted here. At night on a Saturday in cartons. And then we refused to receive them. And then all the chiefs were told to go to funerals and say, Oparanya has refused equipment, that's why people are dying in Kakamega. So I was blackmailed that way.
One person who refused to sign and he's not here, he's not a governor now. Governor Asha Groot. He said he would never sign and over his dead body, and he didn't sign. So at least there is someone who stood strong to prove that.
Governors argue that the annual 200 million shillings payment was steep.
If there is any money for buying of equipment, it is us who know which equipment we require. So this money should be provided to counties as conditional grants so that we are able to buy equipment depending on our varied needs.
Furthermore, the Commission on Revenue Allocation has backed the calls by counties to increase their allocation of funds, especially for the Level 5 hospitals, in line with the implementation of the government's Big Four agenda, in which health features prominently.
This fund of Level 5 is very critical. If there is any funds for universal health coverage, there should just be a special allocation. And in fact, we are now having more Level 5s. They should be now giving us more money for the new Level 5s that have now come up.
If you look at the current allocation of 314 billion to counties and a budget of 32 billion for the Ministry of Health, that is equivalent to 10%. One government ministry takes close to 10%. of what the 47 counties are getting. We do believe really that does not amount to equitable sharing of revenue.
Zainab Ismail, NTV.
And after spending the Easter holiday in lockup, former National Lands Commission Chairperson Mohammed Suzuri was finally granted bail this afternoon. Suzuri and 5 of his 23 co-accused persons were released on a 12 million shilling cash bail with an alternative of a 30 million shilling bond and a surety of a similar amount. The remaining suspects were released on varying terms. NTV's Olive Barrows followed the proceedings in court and filed the following report.
Going by the scowl on his face, there was no need to ask former National Land Commission Chair Mohammed Suzuri how his Easter went, having spent all 4 days of the long weekend locked up. He, however, had some reason to smile after the Anti-Corruption Court declined to extend his time in remand, as the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions had sought. Chief Magistrate Lawrence Mugambi releasing him on a 12 million shilling cash bail with the alternative of a 30 million shilling bond and a surety of the same amount.
I am not persuaded that the threshold for denial of bail has been sufficiently met by the prosecution, going by the information presented to the court.
The Director of Public Prosecutions having asked the court to deny Suzuri and his co-accused bail, arguing that after bail was granted in the Railways Reserve Land compensation case, in which Suzuri is also implicated, evidence was tampered with.
The details of disappearance of the computers and or destruction of evidence, or the circumstances under which it happened, and from which an inference or involvement of any of the accused directly or through process can be ascertained on a balance of probabilities is not provided.
In the present case, Suzuri and 23 others are accused of conspiring to defraud the Kenyan taxpayer of 109 million shillings for the acquisition of land for the construction of the Mombasa Southern Bypass and the Kipevu New Highway Container Terminal Link Road. The land having been initially valued at 34 million shillings in 2015 before Suzuri instructed that a fresh valuation be carried out. The Director of Valuation, Salome Munubi, returning with a figure of 109 million shillings in January of 2017, 3 times the amount of the initial valuation. Munubi had Deputy Director Joash Oindo, former Commissioner Emma Njogu, NLC Finance Director Francis Mugo, and the advocate who facilitated the payment, Catherine Wanjiru Shege, are charged alongside Suzuri and have also been released on a 12 million shilling cash bail. A mentioned date has been set for May the 7th, when a magistrate will be assigned to the case. Olive Barrows, NTV.
Away from the corridor of justice, let's take you to Mombasa, where detectives from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission today grilled the Kenya Ports Authority Managing Director, Dr. Daniel Manduku, over the alleged irregular award of 40 billion shilling tender for the construction of the new Kipevu oil terminal in Mombasa. Manduku asserted that due diligence was done in the award of the multi-billion project to China Communication Construction Company, maintaining that the Kenya Ports Authority was aware that the company had been debarred by the World Bank and that there were no restrictions on their engagement in bidding for the pipeline contract. NTV's Coast reporter Kevin Mutai has the story.
Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is investigating alleged malpractices in the tender for the Kipevu oil terminal.
Moments before he entered the EACC offices in Mombasa for questioning, KPM Managing Director Daniel Manduku expressed confidence about the ongoing investigations in the tender award for the new oil terminal in Kipevu, Mombasa. EACC started its probe after questions were raised concerning the process involved in the procurement procedures, during which China Communications Construction Company was awarded a multi-billion shillings tender. The questions raised included: how did KPA award CCC the tender despite allegations that the company had fraudulently participated in the pre-qualification process and failed to submit details about its debarment by the World Bank? In a letter from CCC and directed to Public Procurement Regulatory Authority, the company argued that allegations made against the China Communications Construction Company were without foundation. The letter stated that the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act allows a period of 14 days from the date of the award to challenge it by way of review, and since none was filed by any party, the letter was therefore improper and it was illegal to cancel the award of the tender. Manduku says the Procurement Authority cleared the tender.
Even the department was specific to roads and bridges. We sought clarification, and in the conditions of tender, the company had already declared that they had this debarment, which was in line with tender conditions.
So you were aware of it?
Yes, we were aware.
ESCC is looking at whether KPA flouted tender procedures and seeking to establish if at all there was conflict of interest in the multi-billion project that attracted more than 10 other companies in the bidding process. Also under investigation is a decision to include liquefied petroleum gas component to the Kipevu terminal, which was not in the original design.
They are looking at the whole process, whether any procurement laws were followed, and whether we did not follow all the steps required.
ESCC had already recorded statements from 15 other KPA officials, including former Managing Director Catherine Muturi. When complete, the Kipevu terminal will have 4 berths with a capacity of moving bigger volumes of fuel products in and out of the country and over 35,000 tons of cargo. The inquiry into the multi-billion shillings oil project at Kipevu in Mombasa now lies at the hands of ESCC detectives in Mombasa, after which their conclusions will be forwarded to the office of the DPP for further directions. Kevin Mutai, NTV, Mombasa.
Right, the other contention in that story is that it was allegedly inflated from 15 billion shillings to 25 billion shillings and finally rested at 40 billion shillings. That's the subject of investigations also in that scandal. Let's move on. And Trade and Industry Cabinet Secretary Peter Munya has dismissed claims that there are special forces set up to target particular individuals on matters of corruption. Instead, he has challenged those implicated in the dam scandal to be transparent and explain to Kenyans why the dams never took off. He spoke during the launch of the Mass Wrigley Confectionaries plant right here in Nairobi's Athi River.
If you are involved in constructing dams that never take off and never store any water, so money belonging to the Kenyan people who will pay those debts have been spent there, and you ask questions. Don't say you belong to this particular community or that particular community, or you belong to whatever political persuasion. Explain to you why these dams are not taking off, and show us how they will take off for value, for Kenyans to get the value for money. Then there will be no issue about whether you are targeted or not targeted.
And the health sector has its own shares of intrigues. Doctors and other stakeholders of the Nairobi Hospital have started the removal process for 6 directors from the board of the Kenya Hospital Association. This coming a week after the board voted to oust embattled hospital chief exec Gordon Odundo after serving a suspension slapped on him late last year. Now, the extraordinary meeting will be the latest law for the institution, which has been embroiled in internal wrangles over the last 2 years, with the last couple of months getting extremely murky. NTV's Eunice Omolo with that report.
Over 50% of members of the Kenya Hospital Association that owns the Nairobi Hospital signed a petition to convene a meeting that will lead to the removal of 7 members of the board, leaving behind 3 directors. In a notice published in the Daily Nation newspaper, the Kenya Hospital Association resolved to go ahead with the reconstitution of the board of directors. This, the latest in a series of events that have dealt body blows to the image of the over 65-year-old iconic the Nairobi Hospital. Last week, the board of directors facing eviction from the office ousted embattled CEO Gordon Odundo, who was fired as the chief executive officer of the hospital amid tremors at the hospital following cholera outbreak that led to over 50 cases. Those to be evicted from office are Chairman John Simba, Vice Chairperson Courts Otolo, and directors Alan Gashukia, Sam Cherry, Charles Karioki, Margaret Mwigai, and Nuja Kapila. Eric Kahugu, Jean Kagia and Esma Inawanjihia will still remain in office. Members further resolved to push the following nominees for election to the Board of Directors of the Association: Tabitha Munyiva, Maxwell Otieno, Jeremy Kindu, Honorable Dr. Chris Bichange, Stephen Ochiel, Wilfred Irungu, Zahra Moi, Susan Kari-Hartley, and Richard Omwela.
And if it comes to a time when the CEO has to go, there are avenues of ensuring this is done.
Leadership wrangles at the Nairobi hospitals have been escalating for a while now. On the 14th of December 2018, the Ousted CEO Gordon Odundo locked himself in his office for hours as a lawyer camped outside to deliver a suspension letter. The hospital would later announce that Odundo had been sent on a 90-day leave to allow the completion of an audit. He was eventually fired on the 17th of this month. There are concerns about the audit report that was originally meant to cover the period Dr. Cleopa Mailu, one-time health cabinet secretary and now Kenya's ambassador to Switzerland, was a chief executive, but which was directed at Odundo. The hospital has struggled with allegations of mismanagement of development funds, especially around projects meant to position the institution as a top-notch quality medical service provider. Eunice Omolo, NTV, Nairobi.
Now to that tragic story that happened over the weekend, the family of the late Robin Alan Njiru have refuted claims that their son had gone to Arusha to participate in a streetcar race that turned tragic, leaving 3 Kenyans dead and 1 critically injured. The late Njiru's family insists that their son, who was in the company of his friends, was merely among the spectators who had been invited by the Tanzanian counterparts on the ill-fated day. NTV's Seth Olale spoke to the distraught family members who are mourning the unexpected departure of their loved one.
On a normal day, Patrick Njiru, who's the father of the late Robin Alan Njiru, would walk this path with his 22-year-old son. But now, he is accompanied by family members who have gathered to condole with him over his son's death on Sunday afternoon in a fatal road accident along the Namanga-Arusha highway.
That driver of that vehicle which hit my son's car came from Dodoma.
Robin's father is too emotional to finish his remarks and is supported by family members. But even more shaken is 26-year-old Douglas Kuria, the late Robin Alan Njiru's brother, and who was with him in Arusha when the unexpected happened. Douglas, who was in a car right behind his brother's ill-fated vehicle, literally saw the accident unfold in front of him.
He was self-driven. He loved cars, and most of all, he loved his family. And I think what his best hobby was his car.
Kirinyaga women representative Purity Ngirishi, who is aunt to the late Robin, urged the media and members of the public to be factual while conveying information, stating that unverified reports are hurting the family that is mourning their departed son.
I pray that everybody will let families grieve, because these were very young men with very promising future. And I believe we will not be hating because one boy had been bought for a car by his father, or because he comes from a family that is able.
Even people are saying that they were drunk, they were racing. I want to tell you the truth, the boys were not anywhere racing.
The body of the late Robin Alan Njiru currently lies at the Kenyatta University mortuary. The remains of the mechatronic engineering student who was training at DT Dobby were flown into the country on Sunday alongside the bodies of the late Onesmus Mashira Mwangi and Lynette Mutio Kamau, who also perished from Sunday's tragic accident in Arusha. Another Kenyan, Stella Muigai, remains admitted at Kenyatta National Hospital after being transferred by ambulance from Arusha to the capital. The late Robin Alan Njiru will be laid to rest next week on Tuesday in Mwea, Kirinyaga County. In the meantime, family and friends are gathering at their Runda residence in Nairobi. Seth Olale, NTV, Nairobi County.
Really, really sad story right there. Now, teachers from some counties turned up for the first day of training in the competence-based curriculum launched by Education Cabinet Secretary George Magoha, who says the rollout of the new curriculum will continue despite opposition from the Kenya National Union of Teachers. NTV's education reporter Sharon Baranga with those details.
Chaos marred this center in Bungoma County, where teachers were scheduled to attend training on the competence-based curriculum. The Kenya National Union of Teachers Secretary from Bungoma was here to see to it that no training was taking place. And true to his word, none took place. They disrupted the session and chased away teachers and their trainers. The disruption was replicated at Lugulu Girls High School, Milo Boys High School and Bokoli Primary School. Kenya National Union of Teachers Secretary General Wilson Sosion instructed teachers to boycott the training.
This CBC is ill-timed. Research has told us that it has collapsed in 8 countries.
In Nakuru County, a few teachers turned up for the training. NAT officials say the country needs more time before the CBC is implemented. They also claim that the trainers are not well conversant with the curriculum and that not all parties were involved in coming up with the curriculum.
Mtaala tulio nao saa hizi, walimu walipitia mafunzo kwa miaka miwili kabla 844 kuanza. Ni nini hiki ambacho kitaweza kutimizwa kwa siku 4?
In Kisii County, some of the teachers opted to go back home for lack of writing materials. A majority who did not turn up for the training are said to be from private schools. However, teachers in the region are requesting the ministry to extend the duration of training from 4 days to 1 week. In other counties such as Mombasa, Kisumu, Taita Taveta, Nyeri, Murang'a and Nairobi, the exercise went on smoothly. Education Cabinet Secretary George Magoha says the rollout of the new curriculum will continue despite opposition from the Kenya National Union of Teachers.
If you have somebody who agrees with you all the time, then you are either both fools or one is a liar. So it is very good to continue to identify the problems and we continue to address them. Like from the pre-primary 1 and 2 to primary 1, 2 and 3, you can take it to the bank that there is something going on. You can either decide to see it or close your eyes.
A number of NAT officials have been arrested for disrupting the training. Anthony Munga, on behalf of the Inspector General of Police, said in a statement, and I quote, "Instructions have been given to our county and sub-county commanders under the supervision of regional commanders to ensure that the training continues uninterrupted." He goes on to say, "We shall not allow anyone to unlawfully sabotage legitimate activities of government, and those culpable will be apprehended and be dealt with according to the law." End of quote. This week's training of teachers on the competence-based curriculum targets over 90,000 teachers countrywide, and it will be an ongoing exercise. Next year, the CBC will be implemented in grade 4.
In the next 4 days, head teachers and teachers teaching from pre-primary to grade 4 will undergo training on the competence-based curriculum. The Teachers Service Commission hopes to train over 200,000 teachers by December this year. Sharon Baranga, NTV, Nairobi.
A lot of reactions on our first story, the one that the Council of Governors is asking the Senate to investigate the 38 billion medical equipment leasing project, and a reaction from Richard Kiprop on Twitter, which is very valid. He asks or says that actually his issue is the fact that there were no need assessment that was done. Most of those equipment are still lying in the counties while they continue to repay those loans. Again, why lease and not purchase? A good question and a good point to take a break. NTV Tonight, we'll be right back. Interpreter tonight is David Agondoa. Right, we see a lot of reaction from the hashtag we'll be using in the next hour, that is sidebar. We asked a question on Twitter: should the Deputy President be investigated by the NCIC for his comments? We'll be telling you about those comments shortly, but first let's take a look at some of these other stories. And the multi-sectoral initiative against corruption is now asking church leaders to keep the pulpit and the house of God free of partisan politics and suspect donations. The leader of the Anglican Church, Archbishop Jackson Olisapit, gave his comments moving forward as part of the initiative challenging fellow church leaders not to entertain politicians nor their generous donations. NTV's Mark Masai dissects an issue that has raised questions about the leadership of the church.
The head of the Anglican Church has a message to deliver. One not from his usual pulpit, but from a press briefing convened by the Multi-Sectoral Initiative Against Corruption that brings together different stakeholders in fighting graft.
My unequivocal commitment today is to mobilize all our congregation to join the war against corruption.
But that's not all. Archbishop Sapit reiterated the call against churches receiving proceeds from politicians.
I urge all our bishops to shun partisan politics from the pulpit. Let us not allow Harambee monies to be a subtle way of sanitizing the corrupt leaders.
This comes just a day after an Anglican bishop from Mount Kenya Central Diocese, Timothy Geshere, said he would receive donations from politicians.
Even as yesterday, I was seeing church leaders saying, we will welcome that money because we don't know how to how to identify dirty and clean money. Yes, it is true, but our teaching in the church is that, and I said that during my Easter message, let us learn as a church to worship God with our resources quietly.
Mimi nitawapatia shilingi milioni 5.
A politician who has defended repeatedly his donations to the church is no less than Deputy President William Ruto, latest being on April 14th at a funds drive for the Salvation Army Church, where he gave 5 million shillings towards the construction of a church guest house in Kakamega.
Mimi nimejitolea kwamba sitaaibika kuwa mshirika na Wakristo kwa maneno ya Mwenyezi Mungu.
And in November 18th, 2018, while in Kiambu County,
nimejipanga na kanisa kwa sababu siwezi kuwa hasla hapa duniani alafu niende nikuwe hasla tena mbinguni.
Perhaps there is need for further introspection, reviewing and commitment from the church on this, as not too long ago Archbishop Olisapit hosted Deputy President Ruto at All Saints Cathedral, where he donated 8 million shillings. All said and done, the Archbishop had some advice for Kenyans who are highly religious and 80% said to be Christian.
Maybe we still have 80% as nominal Christians, but committed Christianity is something that we need to review and revisit ourselves. And I've been identifying this myself as the Archbishop. There is a big disconnect.
So help us God. Mark Masai, NTV.
Well, let's see if the church lives up to its own words. Now, police in Bungoma are holding a middle-aged man from Ndegelwa village, that's in Bungoma, for allegedly killing his wife, who was found dead this morning by the neighbors. Her body had deep stab wounds. Zacchaeus Masame has that story for us.
The faces of the residents of Ndegelwa village give away the horror that unfolded inside this home. This morning at around 8 o'clock, neighbors stumbled upon the lifeless body of that 6-year-old Nasambua Malwa. She had deep knife wounds. Her husband, Andrew Mainanjao, a main suspect in her killing, was found lying next to her. He was drunk when the police were taking away her body.
Adi alikuwa wamekunywa bombe, bwana yake akamua. Sasa tunaomba serikali itusaidie, mambo ya pombe hii inatumalisha sisi wanawake.
Kalia alikuwa na majeraha, sasa tuchui kiini hasa ilifanya wana hiyo majeraha. Lakini kwangu naomba serikali ya kwamba wasifuatilie vitu vitoko, wafuatilie hasa mambo ya pombe, kwa sababu chanzo ilitoka kwa pombe.
Kwa hii familia, mama mwenyeji wa hapa
alitoweka kwa sababu ile mzozo tu ya kulewa na kufutana vile. Sasa huyu ni mama ambaye amekuja tu kama hata hajamaliza hapa muda hata miezi 2. Ni ile tu ni kama vile unaweza kupata mshikaji tu.
Alikuwa na majeraha kwa mikono. So ni kama kulikuwa na mvutano kafikia kukufa kwake.
The real cause of her death remains unknown, but police are holding her husband for questioning. Her body was taken to Bungoma Referral Hospital mortuary. Zakis Masame, NTV, Bungoma.
Yet another time for some break. When we come back, Julian Samboko has an exclusive for you from the Treasury. You don't want to miss that, so stay with us. NTV Tonight, we'll be back.
The government has been putting on a brave face when it comes to defending the country's debt position, but it turns out that its finances are in a precarious position. Here's Alex Mwangi with an exclusive report on how the National Treasury has admitted to being hard-pressed financially and paradoxically opted to reduce its allocation to the counties in the Division of Revenue Bill for 2019.
On one side of the chamber was the chair of the Council of Governors, who was accompanied by a number of governors. On another was the chair of the Commission on Revenue Allocation, who was accompanied by her chief executive officer. Still on another was the National Treasury, which was represented by the Chief Administrative Secretary, as well as the Director General of Budget, Fiscal and Economic Affairs. When push came to shove during the meeting, it was the National Treasury that took the hit.
But the CS Treasury has never appeared before us, despite our effort.
Since the financial year 15-16 to 17-18, we have had cumulative shortfalls of revenue to the tune of 374 billion.
Despite the Commission on Revenue Allocation proposing that counties be given 335 billion shillings as the equitable share, the National Treasury has settled for 310 billion shillings in the Division of Revenue Bill.
Based on the Division of Revenue Bill table, national revenue will be increasing from 1.6 trillion to 1.8 trillion. That is a growth of 272 billion Kenya shillings. So reducing the counties from 314 to 310 is saying that the extra additional, the 272 billion will go to one level of government, and you'll also cut the other level of government to add to one level of government. In our view, that is not equitable.
If we give the whole 335 to the counties, then, Mr. Chairman, we'll have a deficit. And we're actually even trying to reduce our deficit when we're preparing budgets.
So, Chair, I think we have to be guided by the facts. And the facts tell us that we've been living beyond our means in terms of we might be allocating counties revenues that are not there. If we do not adjust and start coming back to the realistic levels, even the debt that we want to control, we will lose control of that debt, over that debt.
And I think they are a disservice to this nation. You know, Treasury, we want to tell you very clearly that if this is not resolved, we are going to go to court. And it's very dangerous for a government to be going to court with itself.
It is your responsibility as Senate to allocate resources. It is not the responsibility of the Treasury. You have abdicated your responsibility to the Treasury.
Alex Mwangi, NTV.
And speaking about debt sustainability, you want to listen to the next story. Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta is expected at the Second Belt and Road Initiative Forum in Beijing this week to negotiate a 368 billion shillings loan for the extension of the standard gauge railway from Naivasha to Kisumu. But as Victor Kiprop reports, questions about economic viability, inflated costs and debt trap fears still cloud the future of the project.
In his latest trip to the capital of the country's largest trading partner, President Uhuru Kenyatta hopes to return with what is now China's most popular gift to African countries, loans. This time, some 368 billion shillings in funding for the 262 kilometers Naivasha-Kisumu standard gauge railway line. But with the country already trapped in debt and the first phase of the project already recording huge losses, concerns raised during the beginning of the project remain.
It has been very costly for the taxpayer itself in terms of debt and in terms of construction per kilometer. We are seeing that as we extend, the same things continue happening. They're the biggest beneficiaries in all this project. So whether it's a white elephant, and that's the biggest problem with Chinese loans, that the feasibility study is never done. So long as you say you need an airport or an SGR, they will deliver it to you. So they never look at the economic viability of these infrastructure projects.
If secured, the new loan takes the value of Kenya's SGR-related debt to the Exim Bank of China alone to 800 billion shillings. In the 6 months to December 2018, the country spent about 15 billion shillings servicing loans from China, equivalent to 22.05% of the 69.45 billion spent on total foreign debt.
If that's the case, can they renegotiate the loans with the China as they're going to China? Can they try and renegotiate the loans that Kenyans, taxpayers don't feel the burden itself of paying this SGR loan, because it's quite expensive.
China's expansion model in Africa and other parts of the world has largely been criticized as debt trap diplomacy. More than a year after Sri Lanka handed its urban Tota port to China over debt, China was last month forced to cut the cost of Malaysia's new rail project by nearly a third after the country's new prime minister threatened to cancel the projects, which he termed as unfair. Victor Kiprop, NTV Business.
And away from fiscal matters, let's now look at the capital markets. The National Bank share closed Tuesday's trade at 5 shillings and 16 cents, 9.6% higher than it wrapped up Thursday's trade last week. The day-on-day surge in share price leaves shareholders having raked in 152 million shillings in paper wealth compared to the close of business last week. The price gain comes against the backdrop of KCB Group's notice of intention to acquire the struggling lender through a share swap of 10 National Bank shares for each share of KCB Group. KCB Group's notice was issued at the same week that shareholders of NIC and CBA banks approved the merger of the two banks, adding momentum to the push for consolidation in Kenya's banking sector. And manufacturers across the country are set to get a tax incentive once a bill allowing industries to deduct 30% of their electricity expenses from their taxable income is gazetted. Trade Cabinet Secretary Peter Munya has highlighted the high cost of electricity as one of the major issues that has been bogging down manufacturers who are refraining from investing locally and looking for other less competitive markets. Speaking during the launch of the 7 billion manufacturing plant for Mars Wrigley in Athi River, Munya said that the government is effecting reforms, among them reduction in the cost of power, to make it easier to do business in the country. The new facility, focusing on manufacturing chewing gum, is eyeing to increase production and employ more than 1,000 youth in different sectors.
Already rebates are being given to industries in terms of what you consume. When you are able to recoup certain percentages, then you are given rebates. That is already happening. But we are now concluding a more robust reduction in terms of cost of power. We have a committee that has worked on that and concluded. Today the Cabinet Coordinating Committee is discussing that proposal. That is going to bring the cost of doing power significantly down.
Africa and Kenya, for that matter, are part of our strategy to strengthen our play in the emerging markets, where we anticipate over 2/3 of our growth to come from.
And that's it for the business news tonight. I leave you with a financial report.
Night in other news making headlines from around the world now, and Uganda police say they have placed MP Bobi Wine under preventive arrest as a fiery government critic warned that his opposition movement will not be cowed into silence. His confinement under house arrest came just today after police cancelled his concert citing safety concerns and threw tear gas at fans who had rallied behind the musician. Police spokesperson Fred Enanga said the legislator had planned to disrupt public order and officers will stay put outside his home until further notice. And elsewhere, 37 bodies have been recovered after yet another boat sank in the Democratic Republic of Congo. This coming a week after a vessel capsized with nearly 130 people on board. Dozens are still officially missing. 16 survivors were found near the spot where the last week's boat sank on a river in the country's east. Now, following this incident, President Felix Tshisekedi declared a day of mourning and made it mandatory for passengers to have life jackets. And finally, CCTV footage shows a man carrying a rucksack walking and entering the St. Sebastian's Church in Negombo, Sri Lanka, moments before the bomb ripped through the church. The United Nations says at least 45 children were among the more than 320 people killed in the suicide bomb attack that have sparked local, international outrage. There are fears the death toll could rise as many minors are wounded and are still fighting for their lives in intensive care units around the country. Now, today the victims were remembered with a 3-minute of silence that started at 8:30 a.m., the same time the first bomb went off. All right, time yet for another break. When we come back, NTV Sports will be on air. Stay with us.
Sport, I am Orotekiru. Rwandan striker Jacques Tuyisenge was a hero as defending champions Gor Mahia pipped Bandari 1-0 in the Kenyan Premier League match played at the Moi Stadium in Kisumu. Tuyisenge struck in injury time to ensure maximum points for Kogalo, who regained the league of the KPL. Gor now have 49 points, one more than second place Sofapaka, who have played 3 games more, while Bandari lie third. 4 matches are lined up on Wednesday in the KPL, with the highlight being AFC Leopards battling with Kariobangi Sharks at the Kasarani Stadium at 3 p.m. The national under-15 football team is back in the country, having picked up valuable lessons from the Mediterranean International Cup under-16 category competition. The team, coached by David Ouma, posted mixed results, losing all its group stage matches before picking up 2 wins and 1 loss in the competition's consolation stage. The team, which is put up on a homeschooling program at the Federation's National Center of Excellence, now shifts its focus to the FKF Elite League, where it currently sits top of the table.
I'm sure that by the time we're 18, we should be the same size as them, and I feel that tactically and technically we played better than them. But when it comes to things like aerial balls and stuff, that's where we suffered most.
Tumelan uko ball si mwili, ball tu ni akili na tactics peke yake.
Ball si mwili, ball ni akili. It's good that they're learning this very early. And Garissa's Berlin FC will tomorrow face Al Nassr of Wajir in the Chapadimba and Safaricom Northeastern Regional Finals at the Garissa University. Abdallah Maro tapped in a cross at the 10th minute to give Berlin FC a 1-0 victory against the Dab FC in the first semi, held under scorching heat. In the second semi-final, Al Nassr came from a goal down to beat Jamia FC from Mandera 2-1. The winning team will represent the Northeastern region at the national finals set for Meru in June, where 1 million shillings will be up for grabs for both boys and girls teams. Residents of Meru County were treated to an entertaining Easter holiday as the Man and Machine Cottage Motorsport Challenge took center stage at the Charana farm. All sorts of heavy machines were engaged in a grueling battle for supremacy in search for the swiftest and toughest motor engine across the rough and muddy hilly terrain over the slopes of Mount Kenya. Ramesh Halai, co-driven by Vasani Kishore of Team Car Zone, emerged top after shedding off the challenger from Team Chonga Chonga of Rizan Rashid and Team Mafuko, led by Vishan Patel. The next leg will be staged in August. The 39th edition of the London Marathon will be held on Sunday, and on TV Sport, the whole of this week will build up to the race with focus tonight on possible winners, the winning pass, as well as the history and purpose of the race. The London Marathon is one of the 6 marathons that make up the World Marathon Majors. It was a brainchild of Chris Brasher, a former Olympic steeplechase champion and sports journalist, as well as a Welsh Olympic athlete, John Disley, following inspiration from the New York Marathon. It was first held on the 29th of March 1981. It has grown to be one of the most popular marathons in the world. Close to 400,000 people applied to run last year. The London Marathon holds the Guinness World Record for the largest annual fundraising event on the planet. Since its start, runners have raised more than $1.1 billion for various charities. The first edition of the marathon ended in a tie, with American Dick Beardsley sharing the inaugural title with Norwegian Inge Simonsen. Douglas Wakihuri was the first male Kenyan elite winner in 1989, with Joyce Chepchumba the first female Kenyan elite winner in 1997. World marathon record holder Eliud Kipchoge will be going for 4th victory on the streets of London come Sunday, as will the women's only world marathon record holder Mary Keitany. The winners of the men's and women's elite races will each bank $55,000, which is approximately 5.5 million Kenyan shillings, with additional incentives lined up. The race will kick off at 11 a.m. Sunday morning, Kenyan time. Now, NBA action continues early Wednesday morning with teams battling for semi-final playoff slots. At 2 a.m., Toronto Raptors host Orlando Magic, leading the series 3-1.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you for watching NTV tonight. My name is Ken Mijungu, but don't go away. And of course, thank you to David Agondoa, who was my co-pilot tonight. And straight after this, it's Sidebar, and my guests are already here. We have a lot to discuss this evening, including the remark from Deputy President William Ruto. We're also discussing about the housing fund, the housing levy, and apart from that, we want to talk about the Huduma numbers. Aside from that, the president is in China. All this coming up on Sidebar. Stay with us.